John chapter 4, one of the most interesting chapters in all the Gospels, if you ask me. The conversation being held here is very interesting to me. The Pharisees heard that Jesus was gaining and baptizing more disciples than John, although in fact it was not Jesus who baptized, but his disciples. Now we'll read in 1 Corinthians that who got... What am I doing, Cameron? Cats are weird. Who got baptized by whom could become a major problem. It's okay, Tim, Luna. Cats are weird. Cults of personality sometimes developed about, who got baptized by whom. Paul says in 1 Corinthians 1, I'm glad that I didn't actually baptize any of you, except for a small number, because there were problems there were factions in the congregation being formed, I think, largely around who got baptized by whom. Can you just imagine the problems that would have come about if Jesus himself had baptized people? He may have baptized the apostles. I don't know. It seems as though a lot of Jesus' apostles, at least half of them, Peter, Andrew, James, John, Philip, and Nathaniel, seem to have originally been John the Baptist's disciples to begin with. I don't know if all of them were, because we know Matthew seemed to get called separately from that, but it seemed like a number of them were. And we don't really read anything about them, whether or not they ever got baptized. Presumably they did by John, but I don't know. But Jesus himself is not doing the baptizing, I think, mainly because that would cause such intense strife in the nascent church later on. If you had a group of them who were baptized directly by Jesus, those people, unless they were the apostles themselves, those people would be in a position of almost becoming idols to the others. Anyway, when the Lord learned of this, he left Judea and went back once more to Galilee. So he's still in the Judean region for a while after leaving Jerusalem. For they had the Passover, which is in the spring. And so for some time after that, he was in the countryside around Jerusalem in Judea. Apparently, once the word got back to the Jerusalem authorities that Jesus was becoming more popular than John, he decided it was going to cause too much political heat to come down on him too early, so he left. Presumably it was sometime after this that John himself was arrested. Now he had to go through Samaria. So he's on the western side of the Jordan. Samaria is the region of Israel that is north of Judea. This is a region that was formerly the northern kingdom, back when the kingdom was still independent, but split. So after Solomon died, his son Rehoboam could not hold on to the kingdom, and most of the tribes split from Jerusalem and formed their own kingdom, which they called Israel, became known as just Israel. And eventually, over the course of time, that kingdom's capital would be settled on Samaria. And that would be the capital of the northern kingdom until it fell at the hands of the Assyrians in 722 BC. We read all this when we read through the Old Testament. That was 700 plus years ago. I mean, that was 722 BC. This is now 30 or so AD. That was like 750 years ago. When the Assyrians conquered the northern kingdom of Israel, they did what they did to all their conquered enemies. They took some of the people back with them to Assyria, and then they took other people, either their own natives or captives that they had captured from somewhere else, and settled them in Israel and had them mingle with some of the people there who were left. So the 10 northern tribes eventually got diluted into mainly being half-breeds, as we would call them. They may have had legitimate Jewish ancestry, and many of them probably did, but they would have been corrupted and polluted through all this intermarrying that had been going on for 750 years now. When in the days of Nehemiah, we read about this in Nehemiah and Ezra, when the Jews come back to Judah and try to build the temple again, a lot of the opposition comes from the people who are still there, who were kinsmen to them because they were descendants of the northern tribes, but were also foreigners and aliens because they had intermarried with other people groups and worshipped other gods in addition to the Jewish God. They may very well have worshipped Jehovah, but they worshipped other gods in addition to Jehovah, which was pretty much just as bad as not worshiping Jehovah. And they wanted a part of that temple rebuilding project. They didn't want to be excluded in that, and the Jews who were there building the temple again didn't want those people to be part of it, because then they would have a claim to the temple, and they would have a claim to the worship of the proper worship of God, and they were not doing that properly. And that itself was around 450 or so BC. Okay, even that now was 450, 480 years earlier. This is taking place around 30 AD or so. So even that now was close to 500 years ago. And so there had been, and relations between these two people groups had not gotten any better in the years since then. So 500 years or so have gone by, and they still do not like each other. Now they're still living right next to each other. Samaria is directly north of Judea. Now, a lot of Jews, when they would travel to Jerusalem and come down south to get to Jerusalem for their pilgrimages or for any reason, they would walk around Samaria. They would cross the Jordan River and go down that eastern side of the river, because Samaria was on the western side of the Jordan River. So they would cross over to the eastern side and go down. That would put them in Greek territory, but that was better than Samaritan territory. Jesus is not doing that. At least not in this case. He is going straight through Samaria. He has the purpose here. So, he left Judea and went back once more to Galilee. Now, he had to go through Samaria. He just has to. There will be times when he will maneuver around it. In fact, later on the final trip to Jerusalem, he's not even going to be allowed to go through Samaria. The Samaritan villagers aren't going to allow him and his disciples to stay there, because they know he's on the way to Jerusalem. And their arrival to Jerusalem. When Jeroboam became the first king of the northern kingdom, he set up rival worship sites in Jerusalem. He knew that he had a problem because the temple was in Jerusalem. It was no longer a movable tabernacle. It was now a fixed location in the temple. And it was in Jerusalem, and that was the capital of the south, and he was the king of the north. And his people would want to go back there to do their proper worship and their festivals and all that. And if they did that, eventually they would just reunite with the southern kingdom and kick him out and kill him. So he knew that he had a problem that he had to come up with a solution for. And his solution, which was his own solution, he did not consult God for this solution, was to set up false worship sites, two of them in his country, one in the north and Dan, and one in the south in Bethel, and say, these are your worship sites instead. This is where you're going to worship God instead. And ever since then, there's been a dispute between the Samaritans and the Judeans about where to conduct proper worship. The Judeans are correct. It should happen in Jerusalem. I don't know what God's solution to Jeroboam's problem would have been. Jeroboam never asked him. None of the other kings after Jeroboam ever asked him. I mentioned that before when we read through that part of the Bible. Jeroboam had a legitimate problem. He had the worship site that God told him to go to was in Jerusalem, and he was not the king of Jerusalem. And God had told him he could be king of the northern tribes. So I don't know what God's solution to Jeroboam's problem would have been, because Jeroboam never asked him for a solution, and neither did any of the kings who ever came after him. None of them ever did. So I don't know what that solution would have been. But ever since then, and that was 1,000 years ago by this point, because Solomon died in the year 930 BC. Now, ever since then, they've had a conflict about where to conduct proper worship. Essentially, fundamentally, the Judeans are correct. That doesn't mean they're necessarily always right or always good or always in the right, but they are correct about God having placed his name in Jerusalem, and that's where you should go to worship. Now, he had to go through Samaria. He has to have this encounter in this Samaritan town. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. This is all Israel. This may be considered unclean territory to the Jews now, at this point in time. But this is all part of the land that God gave Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Jacob's well was there, and as far as I know, it's still there. And Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about the 6th hour, so about noon, according to time reckoning. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, which was the task of women, to draw water from wells, and usually they would do this in groups. So this woman is here apparently coming ahead of the rest of the group because she's probably not welcome. She's probably been socially shamed from the other women. So she's coming here by herself at a different time of day than they do. So he's sitting there alone. This Samaritan woman comes to the well alone to draw water. And Jesus says to her, "Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone to the town to buy food. So this man and this woman are here alone. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. Or, according to the footnotes, a possible alternate way of looking at it is do not use dishes Samaritans have used. That would make them unclean. I don't know so much about the association. I mean, they didn't like these people, but they didn't want to stay in Samaritan towns. They didn't want to use Samaritan utensils because those would be unclean. Using a Samaritan dish or pot or jar would put a Jewish man in a state of uncleanness. And of course, a man and a woman would not have interacted socially at this point in time anyway. Jesus' overture, his bringing in starting the discussion. This woman was probably nervous, even going to the well, seeing this single man by himself. It probably made her nervous even being there and doing that. She would not have made contact with him. He makes contact with her, and this surprises her, and probably makes her a little uneasy. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." Which means flowing water. It means water that's fresh and clean, coming from a source. "Sir," the woman said, "you have nothing to draw with, and this well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us this well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and his flocks and herds?" Well, yeah, he is actually. He already said that to Nathaniel earlier. That dream, that account of Jacob's dream that you're thinking about or probably reading about under the tree, like, I'm going to be that new place. I'm going to be the new meeting site between heaven and earth. So yeah, he is. That was Jacob's dream that he had. So yeah, he is greater than their father Jacob. So Jesus answered, "Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I give him will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give him will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life." Now, he knows that this woman is not going to understand what he's saying here. So he's thinking 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 moves ahead. He knows that this woman is not going to understand his meaning. So she's going to ask him a question about it. So then he's going to say something else. The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water." Wouldn't that be nice? I mean, wouldn't that be nice to have a sip of water and have that satisfy your water needs forever? I have often said that I would love it if scientists could develop a vitamin, a little pill or something, that you could take once a day, and that would give you all of your nutritional needs, and you wouldn't have to eat again the rest of the day. And that's all you took. If that's all you took to keep your body nourished and healthy, it's just this one miracle vitamin or pill a day. And you wouldn't have to eat, you wouldn't have to prepare food, you wouldn't have to buy food, you wouldn't have to prepare food, you wouldn't have to clean up after eating it. Oh, that'd be so nice. I hate eating, I hate cooking, I hate cleaning up. Okay, it's like, if I didn't have to eat, I would not eat. I would not eat anything ever if I didn't have to. I do not like eating. I don't like cleaning up afterwards. I don't like disposing of the trash. I don't like getting the food in the first place. I don't like preparing it. I don't like eating it. I don't like having to flush the waste. I don't like any part of it. If I could just cut that all out of my life, I would do it, and I would do it gladly. And I would do it forever. If I could, I would. Absolutely. I would not hesitate. If scientists could develop some miracle pill that you could take once a day and have all the nutrients you need and never have to eat anything else ever again, I would do that. Okay? I would do that. This woman is thinking of something like that. I think she's being sarcastic. I don't think she's thinking this. I think she's being sarcastic here. Like, I don't think she thinks this guy can really do this. He says this. She says, okay, give me this water. I don't think she means that seriously in the sense that, okay, give me this miracle water. Maybe she does. He told her, go, call your husband and come back. I have no husband, she replied. Now, she could potentially be seeing this as a mating sign. I mean, again, it's not, this is an interesting and unusual conversation. A single man, a single woman having a conversation like this alone. This would have been highly unusual and maybe even borderline socially improper. So it's not inconceivable that this woman is kind of seeing this as maybe something of a feeling out process. Is Jesus, is this man, a strange Jewish man, inquiring about her marital status? Maybe she's, okay, maybe. But he's not, clearly, that's not what he's doing, but he is setting her up for this next comment. Jesus said to her, you are right when you say you have no husband. And the fact is, you have had 5 husbands. And the man you have now is not your husband. What you have said is quite true. So now how would he know that? He would have no way of knowing that. Clearly it's correct. Okay, clearly he is not wrong in saying this. But how would he know this? He's never been here before. Now, I don't know if that means she's divorced all 5. I doubt that. It could be that at least a couple of those were widowed. She had a couple of, probably her first husband, maybe even her first couple of husbands died. Now, she probably is divorced, and the man she's living with now is not her husband, so she is clearly messed up. But I wouldn't assume automatically that all 5 of her previous marriages ended in. Remember, women could not file for divorce back then. So even if she was divorced, even if some of these 5 marriages, or even all 5 of them, ended in divorce, like, she could not actually file for divorce. It would have been her husbands who would have done that. Now, maybe they found some fault in her and put her out of their house, but she did not have the right to actually file for any of these divorces. So if they were divorces, or if any or all of them were divorces, it would have been her husbands who would have done that. Again, maybe she had a problem that they kept running away from. If she were idolatrous, or adulteress, I should say, she would have been stoned. We're going to read a story about an adulterous woman in a few chapters, and the authorities want to stone her. Okay, and we've read stories in the past, going all the way back to like Judah and Tamar in Genesis 38. We've read stories in the past of adultery. This culture hated adulterous women, all right? They hated them. If this woman has been caught in the act of adultery multiple times, she would not still be living at this moment in time. So I don't know, I don't know what her problem was that led at least some of these 5 men, maybe all 5 of them, to divorce her. But she clearly had some kind of issue. I mean, she's living with someone now who is not her husband. So she has some kind of character flaw that is causing a certain pattern to repeat itself. Again, I wouldn't go so far as to say that all 5 of these men have divorced her. I think it's pretty likely that at least one of them probably had died. Maybe even more than one had probably died. Even then, though, she would get a reputation for being somewhat cursed. And again, if they suspected her of being unfaithful, they could put her out of their house, but if she was actually known to be unfaithful, they would have just stoned her. So there was something wrong with her, but it's hard to say exactly what. But she has a reputation. Okay, even if all 5 of them had been, even if all 5 of them had died, natural deaths that she wasn't a part of, she would have still developed a reputation for having a curse around her. So she's got a bad reputation no matter what. Exactly what it is and where it came from, it's impossible for us to say, but she has a negative reputation. And she's at this well alone. She's not there with the rest of the women in town. She's going into the heat of the day. It's noon, in the middle of the day, presumably to go, to get away from the other women who don't like her. Like she's an outcast of some kind. There's something going on there. We don't know what, but there is something going on there. But she's put off guard now. Jesus has gotten to the heart of the matter, and now she knows that he's not just talking about water or things like that. Sir, the woman said, I can see that you are a prophet. Only a prophet would be able to have this kind of insight into her life and background without knowing. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim that the place where we must worship is in Jerusalem. So they used to have a temple on this mountain. It was actually destroyed by the Jews about 150 years earlier. So she's saying worshipped in the past tense because there's no temple up there now. But they're used to, this is near Mount Gerizim. This was the temple that, one of the mountains that they went to pronounce the blessings and cursings, and then when they came up out into the land, back in the end of Deuteronomy and during Joshua. Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal. One group of people stood on one mountain, one stood on the other, and they called back chants and recitations to each other. So this is an important mountain in their history. And the Samaritans had a temple there that was destroyed by the Jews in the 100s BC. So about 150 or so years before this incident. So she's acknowledging he's a prophet. He has to be a prophet. He has to have a prophet to have this kind of insight into her life and background. So she's trying to kind of acknowledge that, but also be defensive and doesn't really want to keep probing into her past. So she's acknowledging he's a prophet, but is also trying to change the subject. Our fathers worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim the place we must worship is in Jerusalem. Jesus declared, Believe me, woman, a time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know, for salvation is from the Jews. It's not for the Jews. I mean, it is, but it's for everybody. It's from the Jews, because Jesus is a Jew. The law, the temple, the tabernacle, the sacrificial system, the prophets, Jesus himself, the Messiah, those all came from the Jews. They came into the world through the Jewish nation. And he is saying that, yes, that's right. You're supposed to, right now, at this point in time, up to this point in time, proper worship is done in Jerusalem. You don't know what you're worshiping. You Samaritans have been wrong this whole time. You are supposed to worship in Jerusalem, but the time is coming when that won't matter any longer. The physical location won't matter any longer. The time is coming, and in a sense, with my own arrival, it has come. Now, it won't really come until the day of Pentecost, which is still a few years in the future at this point. But with Jesus' arrival, that time is not breaking into the world, and it's coming. That you will no longer be bound to a temple or a physical location to conduct proper worship. Yet a time is coming and has not come when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth. They are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. It was never about a building. In fact, when the Jews made it too much about the building, both in the past and currently at this time, God took the building away from them. It was never about the building. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship in spirit and in truth. The woman said, I know that Messiah, called Christ, is coming. And when he comes, he will explain everything to us. Then Jesus declared, I who speak to you am he. Now that would be an eye-opener right there. I can just imagine her like staring at him and just, being like open mouth, slack-jawed in amazement, like, huh? Then his disciples returned. Just then his disciples returned and were surprised to find him talking with a woman. This again would not be socially normal and probably not even socially proper. But no one asked, what do you want, or why you're talking with her. It's like, okay, the teacher wants to talk to this woman, that's his business. I'm not going to question the teacher. Then, leaving her water jar, the woman went back to the town and said to the people, I'm assuming she dashed back. I'm assuming she just left it there in a hurry and dashed back. Come, see a man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Christ? Now, she's exaggerating here. He didn't tell her everything he ever did, but she's clearly caught up in the moment, which leads me to think she's dashing back to town as quickly as she can. They came out of the town and made their way toward him. So they probably didn't like this woman. She probably had a negative reputation around town. But she was probably so earnest and so forceful in getting them to. It may have taken some talking. It may have taken some encouragement, some pushing. But she was probably so forceful and so clearly excited and eager and overcome that eventually some of them at least started going back with her, and that led to the crowd coming. Meanwhile, as she's trying to convince the people, his disciples urged him, "Rabbi, eat something." So they got food. They went in town to get food. Now they got it. They're back. So apparently he's not eating any longer. He's not even thinking about food anymore. But he said to them, "I have food to eat that you know nothing about." Then his disciples said to each other, "Did someone have brought him food?" "My food," said Jesus, "is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work." So Jesus was tired and hungry and thirsty. But now that he has this opportunity in front of him, he's forgotten all about that. He's excited. He's so excited now about this upcoming harvest. He's going to be getting. He's not even thinking about food anymore. Do you not see? Do you not say, 4 months more and then the harvest? I tell you, open your eyes and look at the fields. I'm assuming he's probably motioning towards this town as the people are gathering and are starting to come out to them. They are ripe for harvest. Even now the reaper draws his wages. Even now the reaper draws his wages. Even now he harvests the crop for eternal life, so that the sower and the reaper may be glad together. Thus the saying, one sows and another reaps, is true. Paul will use this imagery too when he talks to the Corinthian church about the different tasks of the different apostles and teachers, like what they do and the different roles they play. So somebody puts it in the ground, somebody pulls it out of the ground, somebody will water it, somebody will plant it. God is the one ultimately who makes it grow. I sent you to reap what you have not worked for. Others have done the hard work, and you have reaped the benefits of their labor. I think he's talking about this crowd of Samaritans who are coming out to meet them now. So this harvest field is ripe. It's time to, the work has been done. It's time to bring in the harvest and enjoy the fruits, the benefits of it. Many of the Samaritans from that town believed in him because of the woman's testimony. He told me everything I ever did. So when the Samaritans came to him, they urged him to stay with them, and he stayed 2 days. Now remember, for a Jew to go into a Samaritan village and stay there would make them unclean. But as we've seen in previous Gospels, Jesus was not particularly concerned about the purity laws. Jesus himself was pure, and he made the impure pure. Normally, the pure became impure by coming into contact with impure things. You couldn't really pass purity along, but you could pass impurity along. It was much easier to become unclean than clean. It was much easier to pass on uncleanness than cleanness. But Jesus passes on his purity to those who are impure. So he stays with them for 2 days, and because of his words, many more became believers. They said to the woman, "We no longer believe just because of what you said. Now we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this man really is the Savior of the world."